The night I lost my job started with a little boy screaming in the rain. I still hear that sound sometimes when the city goes quiet after midnight, thin, terrified. The kind of cry that makes every decent person stop walking, even in Manhattan where people pretend not to notice each other. The rain hammered against the sidewalk hard enough to bounce back up around my sneakers as I rushed toward the school entrance carrying a plastic bag full of student art projects pressed against my chest. My shift had ended 40 minutes earlier, but Mrs. Delgado's second graders had spent all afternoon making paper lanterns for the fall festival, and I had volunteered to lock up after everyone left. Typical Evelyn Carter behavior, according to my sister. Too soft, too willing to stay late, too incapable of minding my own business. Maybe she was right, because if I had just kept walking to my car that night, my life would have stayed small and safe and painfully ordinary. Instead, I heard the scream. The little boy stood near the curb beneath the flickering street lamp, soaked from head to toe in a Spider-Man hoodie 2 sizes too big for him. Maybe 7 years old. Maybe 8. His small shoulders shook violently while a man towered over him, gripping his backpack strap hard enough to yank the child off balance every few seconds. I said, "Get in the car." The man's voice cut through the rain sharp and ugly. The boy cried harder. "Please don't make me go back there." Something cold moved through my chest, the kind of instinct women develop early in life, the feeling that tells you something is wrong before your brain catches up. I slowed near the gate, trying to assess the situation without escalating it. Maybe it was his father, maybe I was misunderstanding. But then the child flinched before the man even raised his hand halfway, and that tiny reflex told me everything I needed to know. Fear like that doesn't come from one bad day. It comes from repetition. "Hey," I called out before I could stop myself. The man turned toward me slowly, irritation flashing across his face. Mid-40s, maybe. Expensive coat. Gold watch glinting beneath the street light. The kind of polished appearance that made people trust someone automatically. "This doesn't concern you," he snapped. The little boy looked at me like I was the last person on earth. Rainwater streamed down his pale cheeks, mixing with tears. "Miss Carter," he whispered. Recognition hit me instantly. Noah Bennett. 3rd grade. Quiet kid. Drew dinosaurs in the margins of every worksheet. Ate lunch alone unless I sat beside him. My stomach tightened. Noah, his lower lip trembled. "Please don't let him take me." The man stepped forward immediately. My stepson is emotional. "We're leaving." He reached for the boy again. I moved before thinking. "Don't touch him." The words came out louder than I intended. The man froze. So did Noah. Cars hissed past through puddles behind us while thunder rolled somewhere above the skyline. "You need to calm down," the man said, smiling now in that dangerous way adults do when they realize witnesses are watching. You teachers always think you know everything. I ignored him and crouched slightly so Noah could see my face. "Are you hurt?" He hesitated, then gave the smallest nod imaginable. Rage climbed slowly up my spine. Not explosive rage, worse. The quiet kind. The kind that makes your hands stop shaking. "I'm calling the police," I said. The smile disappeared from the man's face instantly. "You have no idea who you're talking to?" "Maybe not," I replied, pulling out my phone. "But I know a scared kid when I see one." His expression darkened. For one terrifying second, I thought he might actually step toward me. Instead, headlights swept across the street behind him. A long black SUV rolled silently to the curb across from the school. Matted black, tinted windows. Expensive enough to look unreal beneath the rain. The engine stayed running. I barely noticed it at first because Noah suddenly grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Please don't let him take me home." The man muttered a curse under his breath. Then he pointed at me with cold precision. "You just ruined your career." I should have been scared by that sentence. Maybe part of me was, but another part looked at Noah shaking beneath the storm and realized some things matter more than paychecks and school board meetings and keeping your head down. I wrapped my coat around the boy's shoulders and held him closer while dialing 911 with numb fingers. Across the street, the black SUV remained perfectly still, watching, waiting. And when I finally glanced toward it through the rain streaking my face, I saw the silhouette of a man sitting motionless in the back seat, staring directly at me like he already knew my life was about to change forever. The police arrived 11 minutes later, but by then the expensive sedan was already gone. Noah sat beside me inside the school lobby, wrapped in an oversized faculty blanket, while Officer Daniels spoke quietly with him near the vending machine. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, making everything feel colder than it already was. Rainwater dripped from the ends of my hair onto the tile floor, while I stared through the glass entrance doors toward the empty street outside. The black SUV was gone too, like it had never been there at all. Miss Carter? I looked up to find the principal standing near the front office with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Linda Graves had run Westbrook Elementary for almost 15 years. Strict. Organized. The kind of woman who measured life in schedules and liabilities. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she approached me. A word. Now. Something in her tone made my stomach sink. I followed her into the office while Officer Daniels remained with Noah out the second the door closed behind us. Linda removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose like I had personally ruined her evening. Do you understand what kind of situation you have created? I blinked at her. A child asked for help. You physically intervened with a parent. Stepfather, I corrected immediately. And Noah was terrified. Terrified children say many things during emotional episodes. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes did not. The Bennett family has already contacted the district attorney. I stared at her in disbelief. You cannot seriously be blaming me for protecting him. I am blaming you for handling it irresponsibly. My chest tightened. So I was supposed to leave him there. She looked away for half a second. That was answer enough. Silence filled the office except for the rain tapping softly against the windows. I suddenly felt exhausted down to my bones. The kind of exhaustion that makes you realize the world only likes kindness when it is convenient. You know, Noah comes to school hungry half the time, I whispered. You have seen the bruises on his arms. Linda's expression hardened instantly. Careful, Evelyn. No. You be careful. That little boy begged me not to let that man take him home. She inhaled slowly like she was struggling to remain patient with the child. The Bennetts donate over $2 million annually to this district. There it was, not safety, not truth, money. My laugh came out quieter than I expected. Sadder, too. So that is what this is really about. This is about protecting the school. From what? I asked. A teacher with a conscience. Her jaw tightened. Turn in your classroom keys before Monday. The words hit harder than I expected, even though part of me had already seen this coming. 5 years of buying crayons with my own money and staying late to help kids with reading problems and memorizing birthdays because some of them never heard their names spoken kindly at home. Gone in one sentence. I should have cried. Instead, I just sat there numb while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the city skyline. Linda slid a folder across the desk toward me without meeting my eyes. You will receive the official paperwork tomorrow. I looked at the folder but did not touch it. Did Noah go home with him? She hesitated too long. Child Services will follow up. Which meant yes. The office suddenly felt too small to breathe in. I stood so quickly my chair scraped against the tile floor. You know what the worst part is? I said softly. Tomorrow everyone here will pretend this never happened. Linda's expression flickered with something almost human for half a second. Regret maybe, but it vanished quickly beneath professionalism. Good night, Miss Carter. I walked out without another word. Noah was gone by the time I reached the lobby. Only Officer Daniels remained near the doors finishing paperwork on a tablet. He looked up as I approached. You did the right thing tonight, he said quietly. I swallowed hard. Did I? His eyes drifted briefly toward the street outside. Men like Richard Bennett usually get what they want. The way he said men like carried weight I did not fully understand. I stepped outside into the cold rain, clutching the cardboard box, holding the few things from my classroom that Linda had apparently already packed for me. Construction paper. Stickers. A chipped coffee mug that said "World's okayest, teacher." My car sat alone beneath the flickering parking lot light. I had almost reached it when headlights swept silently across the wet pavement behind me. The black SUV rolled to a stop beside the curb again. Smooth. Silent. Predatory. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up, which somehow scared me more. The rear passenger door opened slowly. A man stepped out wearing a charcoal overcoat over a black suit tailored so perfectly it looked carved onto him, tall. Dark hair damp from the rain. Hands in his pockets like he owned the entire city behind him. He looked at me the same way he had earlier through the tinted glass. Calm. Unreadable. Dangerous. Miss Carter, he said in a low voice smoother than whiskey. You just lost your job because you protected a child. I tightened my grip on the cardboard box. Who are you? His eyes moved briefly toward the school entrance behind me before returning to my face. Someone who noticed rain collected along the edges of the cardboard box in my arms while I stared at the stranger standing beside the black SUV. Up close, he looked even more dangerous somehow. Not because of anything obvious. He was perfectly controlled, perfectly calm. Men who wanted to scare you usually raised their voices or invaded your space. This man did neither. He simply stood there beneath the rain like the storm belonged to him. I do not remember asking to be noticed, I replied carefully. One corner of his mouth moved slightly, not a smile, more like an acknowledgement. The driver remained inside the SUV with both hands on the wheel while another man stood near the front passenger side holding an umbrella he never opened. Security. Definitely security. My pulse picked up. "You should go home, Miss Carter," the stranger said quietly. "Tonight has already cost you enough. You know my name. You know many things." The answer should not have sent a chill through me, but it did. I shifted the box higher against my chest. "What exactly do you want?" His dark eyes held mine for several seconds before he finally stepped closer beneath the glow of the parking lot light. Maybe 34. Italian features. Expensive watch beneath the cuff of his coat. The kind of presence that changed the atmosphere around him without effort. "My name is Damien Moretti." I froze. The name hit somewhere deep in my memory, even though I could not place why. Not from personal experience. From whispers. News articles. Conversations people lowered their voices for. Moretti Holdings. Nightclubs. Real estate. Charities, rumors wrapped in tailored suits, and million-dollar smiles. The city spoke his name carefully. "You own the Bennett Foundation," I realized suddenly. His expression remained unreadable, partially. "Then, you know Richard Bennett." Unfortunately, rain slid down the side of my face while the cold soaked deeper into my clothes. "If this is about tonight, I already gave my statement to the police." "This is not about the police." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. Damien glanced briefly toward the school entrance before returning his attention to me. "Noah Bennett has been transferred out of state before." "What?" 3 schools in 2 years. My breath caught. "How do you know that?" "Because Richard creates problems," Damien replied evenly. "And wealthy men are very skilled at relocating them." Anger flared hot through my exhaustion. "Then why has nobody stopped him?" The silence that followed felt heavy, not defensive. Tired. Damien slid one hand into his coat pocket slowly. "Because men like Richard donate to campaigns and hospitals and private schools. Because they shake the right hands at charity gills." His eyes darkened slightly. "Because monsters rarely look like monsters from far away." Thunder rolled somewhere above the skyline again. I hated that part of me, believed him instantly. "So why are you telling me this?" I asked softly. "Because you stood in front of him anyway." His answer came immediately, no hesitation. No performance. The honesty of it unsettled me more than manipulation would have. I looked away first toward the empty street shimmering beneath red traffic lights and rainwater. My entire life suddenly felt unstable. No job. Rent due in 12 days. Student loans waiting like wolves at the door. And somehow I was standing in a school parking lot talking to one of the most powerful men in New York after midnight. "I should go," I whispered. Damien nodded, once like he expected that answer. "One of my drivers will follow you home tonight." I looked back at him sharply. "Excuse me. Richard Bennett does not enjoy public embarrassment. I do not need protection." That is usually what people say right before they do. Frustration flickered through me. "You cannot just decide things for strangers." "No," he agreed calmly. "But I can recognize danger faster than most." The driver stepped out of the SUV then, holding a black umbrella over Damien without a word. Even that small movement carried military precision. Everything about these men felt disciplined, controlled, not loud criminals from movies. Worse, quiet ones. Damien reached into his coat again and handed me a simple white business card. Heavy paper, embossed lettering, no logo, just his name and a phone number. "Tomorrow morning," he said. "Someone from the district will leak a story claiming you acted aggressively toward a parent." My stomach dropped. "How would you know that?" "Because people become predictable when money is involved." I stared at the card in my hand while rain drummed softly against the pavement around us. "Why are you helping me?" For the first time since stepping out of the SUV, Damien looked almost human instead of untouchable. Tired, maybe. Older somehow. "When I was 8 years old," he said quietly, "a teacher once stood between me and a man she was afraid of." His gaze held mine steadily. Nobody protected her afterward. Something painful moved behind his eyes before disappearing just as quickly. Then he stepped backward toward the SUV. Good night, Miss Carter. The rear door closed softly behind him. A second later, the black vehicle disappeared into the rain without another sound, leaving me standing alone beneath the flickering light, clutching a cardboard box in one hand and the business card of a dangerous man in the other. And for reasons I could not explain yet, I suddenly had the terrifying feeling that meeting Damien Moretti was not the worst thing that happened to me that night. It was the beginning of something much bigger. I barely slept. Every time headlights passed outside my apartment window, I sat upright in bed, convinced someone was watching the building. By 6 in the morning, the city outside had dissolved into gray fog and cold drizzle, and my tiny studio apartment smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. The business card Damien Moretti gave me sat beside the sink untouched. Plain white, elegant lettering. Dangerous in the quietest possible way. I kept telling myself I was not going to call him. Men like Damien did not help people for free. Men with security teams and black SUVs always wanted something eventually. That was how New York worked. Nothing came without a price tag attached. My phone buzzed against the counter hard enough to make me jump. Rachel, my younger sister, sounded breathless the second I answered. Please tell me the internet is lying. Cold moved slowly through my stomach. What are you talking about? Silence. Soft click of a television somewhere on her end. Evelyn, my laptop, sat closed on the kitchen table beside a stack of unpaid utility bill I already knew before I opened it. The article appeared immediately at the top of every local feed. Westbrook teacher accused of aggressive conduct toward parent. Underneath sat a blurry cell phone image of me stepping between Noah and Richard Bennett in the rain. Whoever filmed it managed to capture the exact second my arm lifted defensively toward him. Out of context, it looked awful. My pulse pounded in my ears while I read the statement released by the school district. A staff member acted outside approved safety protocols. Concern regarding emotional instability. Administrative separation effective immediately. Emotional instability. I laughed once under my breath. Sharp. Hollow. The article already had thousands of comments underneath. Some defended me. Most did not. People always sided with money when given enough time. Rachel kept talking softly through the phone. Ivy, maybe stay with me for a few days. I am fine. You do not sound fine. I looked around my apartment, slowly. 400 square feet. Peeling paint near the radiator. Tiny kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The coffee maker I bought secondhand during college. My entire life suddenly felt fragile. Like one bad headline had cracked straight through it. I just need some time, I whispered. Another knock interrupted before Rachel could answer. 3 slow knocks against my apartment door. My entire body stiffened instantly. Nobody visited me unannounced. Especially not at 8:15 in the morning. Evie. Rachel's voice sharpened. What is wrong? Someone is here. I muted the call and moved carefully toward the door. The hallway beyond the peephole looked empty at first until a man in a dark suit stepped slightly into view. Tall, earpiece, professional posture. My heartbeat dropped straight into my stomach. Miss Carter, he said calmly through the door. Mr. Moretti asked me to check on you. Of course he did. I should have felt angry. Instead, exhaustion washed over me so heavily I almost leaned against the wall. How does he know where I live? Mr. Moretti believes preparation is important. Not comforting. Not even remotely comforting. I cracked the door open slightly, chain still locked. The man held a folded newspaper toward me. You should see page 6. Then he stepped back. Immediately, giving me space. Respectful. Controlled. That somehow unsettled me more than intimidation would have. I took the paper carefully. Another article. Another headline. But this one froze me completely. Bennett executive under investigation for misuse of charity funds. My eyes moved rapidly down the page. Anonymous financial complaints. Internal audits. Questions about missing donations connected to children's outreach program. Richard Bennett's smiling campaign photo sat beside the article, looking polished and untouchable as always. Except now there was sweat on his forehead, captured beneath camera flashes. This happened overnight? I asked quietly. The bodyguard's expression never changed. The city moves quickly sometimes. My gaze lifted slowly from the newspaper. Did Damien Moretti do this? A pause. Mr. Moretti dislikes people who harm children. Not a yes. Definitely not a no either. The hallway suddenly felt colder. I looked back at the business card still sitting on my kitchen counter, visible through the partially open doorway. Everything Damien said last night had come true almost word for word. The article. The district turning on me. Richard protecting himself first. Fear crept quietly beneath my ribs, because powerful men should not be this prepared unless they were used to war. "Tell Mr. Moretti thank you," I said carefully, "but I can handle myself." The bodyguard nodded once like he expected that response too, then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me a sealed envelope. Heavy cream paper. No address. "Mr. Moretti also asked me to give you this." I waited until the man disappeared down the hallway before closing the door completely. My fingers hesitated slightly, opening the envelope. Inside sat a single keycard embossed with silver lettering. The Moretti Foundation. Alongside it rested a handwritten note in sharp, elegant penmanship. "If you want the truth about Noah Bennett, come tonight, 8 o'clock. Come alone." I stared at the note while rain tapped softly against my apartment window again. Then my phone buzzed with a private number. One new voicemail. I pressed play slowly. Richard Bennett's voice filled the kitchen smooth and cold. "You should have minded your own business, Miss Carter." By 7:30 that evening, Manhattan looked like a city holding its breath. Rain misted across the sidewalks in silver waves, while headlights reflected against wet pavement like broken glass. I sat inside my car, 3 blocks away from the address on Damien's note, gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make my knuckles ache. Every instinct told me not to go. Smart women did not walk willingly into the world of men like Damien Moretti. Smart women especially did not go alone after receiving threatening voicemails from powerful businessmen. But Noah's face kept replaying in my mind, the fear in his voice. "Please do not let him take me home." I shut off the engine and stepped into the cold night. Ere before I could change my mind, the Moretti Foundation building rose above the street like something carved out of another universe entirely. 20 stories of black glass and white marble, glowing softly beneath gold exterior lights. Expensive, immaculate, intimidating without trying to be. Men in dark suits stood near the entrance, pretending not to watch everyone who passed by. The second I approached the front doors, one of them stepped forward. "Miss Carter." Not a question. He pressed a hand lightly against an earpiece before nodding once. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you." Of course he was. The lobby looked more like a luxury hotel than a charity foundation. White stone floors polished so perfectly they reflected the chandeliers overhead. Quiet piano music drifted through hidden speakers while wealthy donors in tailored coats crossed the room carrying glasses of champagne. Everything smelled faintly of cedar and expensive perfume. I suddenly became painfully aware of my thrift store coat and worn boots still damp from the rain. A woman behind the reception desk smiled politely. Penthouse level. Penthouse. Naturally. The elevator doors closed softly behind me, sealing me inside mirrored walls and silence thick enough to hear my own heartbeat. I watched the floor numbers rise slowly while anxiety curled tighter inside my chest with each second. When the doors finally opened, the atmosphere changed immediately. Quieter. Colder somehow. No music. No donors. Just dark wood floors, low lighting, and 2 security men standing near a set of black double doors. One opened them without speaking. Damien stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, one hand resting in his pocket while city lights stretched endlessly behind him. No tie tonight. Just a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. He looked less like a businessman up here and more like what people whispered he truly was. Dangerous, controlled. The kind of man who never needed to raise his voice because everyone else lowered theirs automatically. "You came," he said quietly. "You threatened me with cryptic notes," I replied. That is not exactly an invitation people ignore. A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face before disappearing again. "Did Richard Bennett call you?" My stomach tightened instantly. "How did you know that?" "Because fear is predictable." Damien moved toward a nearby table where 2 untouched cups of coffee waited beside a folder thick with documents. "Sit down, Evelyn." Hearing my first name in his voice unsettled me more than it should have. Calm. Smooth. Like he had already decided something about me I had not figured out yet myself. I remained standing. "You said you had information about Noah." Damien studied me for several seconds before finally nodding toward the folder. "Richard Bennett has been under private investigation for 14 months. I stared at him. Private investigation by who? Me. The honesty of the answer landed heavily between us. Why? His jaw shifted slightly. Not anger. Restraint. Because children connected to one of Bennett's outreach programs started disappearing from school records. Cold spread through my chest. Disappearing? Relocated. Foster transfers. Emergency placements. Damien's voice stayed level, but something dark moved underneath it. Paperwork changed. Histories erased. Too many coincidences. My hands felt numb suddenly. You think Richard is hurting children. I think Richard profits from vulnerable families. The room seemed to tilt slightly around me. Why have you not gone to the police? Damien's gaze locked onto mine fully then, and for the first time since meeting him I saw exhaustion behind the power. Because corruption travels upward before it falls apart. Silence filled the office. Somewhere far below us, car horns echoed through the city streets. I looked down at the folder but did not open it yet. Why tell me any of this? I whispered. Damien stepped closer slowly, not enough to intimidate me, just enough that I could smell cedar and rain lingering faintly on his clothes. Because Noah trusts you. His voice lowered slightly. And because the second you stood in front of Richard Bennett, you became part of this, whether you wanted to or not. Fear crawled carefully beneath my skin then. Real fear. Not of Damien exactly. The realization that powerful men were already moving pieces around me like I was standing on a chessboard I could not even see yet. I swallowed hard. What happens now? Damien's eyes held mine steadily. Now, he said softly, I keep you alive long enough to help me save that little boy. I should have walked out the second Damien said the words, keep you alive. Normal people did not say things like that calmly over coffee in room overlooking Manhattan. Normal people definitely did not keep investigation files on billionaires hidden inside penthouse offices, guarded like military compounds. But nothing about Damien Moretti felt normal. That was the problem. He sat across from me now at the long black conference table, while rain streaked the windows behind him in silver lines. The city lights painted sharp shadows across his face, making him look carved out of darkness and exhaustion. I finally opened the folder with numb fingers. Inside sat photographs, financial records, school transfer documents, children's names highlighted in red ink. Noah Bennett's file rested near the top. I stopped breathing for a second. These schools, I whispered, flipping through papers slowly. They are all connected to Bennett charities. Yes. Damien's voice stayed quiet. Children with unstable family situations, foster placements, domestic cases. The kind nobody tracks carefully enough. My chest tightened painfully. And some of them disappeared. Damien gave a single nod. Officially relocated. Unofficially, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. I looked down at a photograph paperclip near the back of the folder. Noah standing outside a private academy beside Richard Bennett 6 months earlier. The boy looked smaller somehow, withdrawn, his eyes empty in a way children's eyes should never be. Why did you bring me here? I asked softly. Damien leaned back, slightly in his chair, studying me with that same unnerving focus he always carried. Because Noah spoke your name yesterday. I blinked. What? After the police took him home. Something sharp moved through Damien's expression, then disappeared. According to one of my sources, he refused to speak to anyone for hours. Then he asked if his teacher was safe. Emotion climbed unexpectedly into my throat. I looked away quickly before he could see it. He is just a little boy. Exactly. Silence stretched between us again. The office felt strangely intimate despite its size. Not romantic. Worse. Honest. Damien watched people too carefully. Like he could read the things they tried hardest to hide. You care about children, I said finally. It was not really a question. His jaw shifted slightly. I care about innocence. The answer felt personal. Dangerous in a different way. Before I could ask anything else, the office doors opened quietly. One of Damien's security men stepped inside, tall, broad shoulders. Expression unreadable. Sir. Damien looked up immediately. What is it? There's movement at Miss Carter's apartment. Every muscle in my body tightened instantly. What kind of movement? The guard glanced briefly toward me before answering. 2 men entered the building approximately 12 minutes ago. One remained outside near the rear alley. Fear slid cold through my ribs. Damien stood so quickly his chair barely made a sound against the floor. Are they still there? Yes. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. Not louder, colder, focused. Damien grabbed his coat from the back of the chair while another security man appeared silently near the doorway as if summoned without words. "I do not understand," I said, standing too fast. "Who are they?" Damien looked directly at me while buttoning his coat with precise movements. "Richard Bennett is reacting faster than I expected." Panic fluttered hard inside my chest. "My apartment. You are not going back there tonight." The certainty in his voice startled me almost as much as the words themselves. "You cannot decide that for me." Damien stepped closer then, close enough that his voice dropped lower. "Listen carefully, Evelyn. Men like Richard only stay civil odds when they believe they are winning." His eyes locked onto mine completely. "You embarrassed him publicly. You became unpredictable. That makes you dangerous to him now." The room suddenly felt too warm to breathe in. "I am a teacher," I whispered. "Not anymore." The words landed harder than they should have. Damien softened slightly after saying them, like he realized it too. "You are someone who stood in front of a frightened child while everyone else looked away," he said quietly. "That changes things." My throat tightened painfully. Outside the windows, lightning flashed across the skyline for half a second. I hated that part of me felt safer standing here beside him than I had felt inside my own apartment all day. Damien turned toward the security men. "Move the car downstairs." Both nodded immediately before disappearing from the office. I stared at him while anxiety and exhaustion twisted together inside my chest. "Where am I supposed to go?" He held my gaze steadily. "Somewhere Richard Bennett cannot reach you." "And where exactly is that?" For the first time all night, something almost human flickered through Damien's eyes. Not arrogance, weariness. With me, the drive across Manhattan felt unreal. Rain blurred against the SUV windows while the city passed in fractured streaks of neon and gold outside. I sat rigidly in the back seat, beside Damien, trying not to think about the fact that I had just abandoned my apartment with nothing except my purse and the clothes I was wearing. Nobody spoke. The silence inside the vehicle carried weight instead of awkwardness. Controlled. Intentional. Damien sat across from me with one arm resting against the door, his attention fixed somewhere beyond the glass, like his mind never fully stopped moving. Every few minutes his phone vibrated softly with messages he barely glanced at before replying with one or two words. Efficient. Precise. Dangerous. I kept wondering how a man who looked this calm could possibly exist in a world built on fear and corruption. Eventually the SUV turned away from the crowded streets and climbed north along quieter roads lined with iron gates and towering trees. Wealth lived differently up here, quieter. Hidden behind walls instead of displayed through storefronts and penthouses. 10 minutes later the gates appeared. Black iron, nearly 12 feet high, sliding open automatically before the SUV even slowed down. My breath caught despite myself. The estate beyond looked less like a home and more like something from an old European film. Stone architecture, warm golden lights glowing through enormous windows. Security cameras hidden carefully beneath ivy-covered walls. The driveway curved around a fountain illuminated beneath the rain, while more black vehicles sat parked near the entrance. "You live here?" I asked quietly before I could stop myself. Damien glanced toward me briefly, unfortunately. The answer surprised me enough to make me look at him properly for the first time since leaving the foundation. He looked tired. Not physically. Soul-deep tired. Like the weight of everything around him pressed constantly against his shoulders, even when he appeared perfectly composed. The SUV stopped beneath the covered entrance, where another suited guard had immediately opened my door with an umbrella already waiting overhead. I stepped out slowly onto polished stone while rain whispered against the roof above us. The front doors opened before we even reached them. A woman in her 60s stood inside wearing an elegant black dress with silver hair pinned neatly at the back of her head. "Welcome home, Mr. Moretti," she said warmly before her gaze shifted toward. Like everyone else tonight, she smiled with genuine kindness. "Miss Carter." Damien removed his coat slowly. "Maria, please prepare the east guest room." Of course. Guest room. The reality of what was happening hit me all over again. I was staying inside Damien Moretti's private estate because a powerful man might be trying to intimidate me into silence. My life had officially crossed into insanity sometime around noon. Maria guided me through the house, while Damien disappeared down another hallway with 2 security men waiting for him. The interior felt even more unreal than the exterior. Dark wood, marble floors, soft lighting reflecting against massive paintings and shelves lined with antique books. Everything expensive without looking flashy. But despite the luxury, something about the house felt strangely empty. Quiet in a lonely kind of way. "You look Frightened, Maria said gently beside me. I let out a weak laugh. Should I not be? Her expression softened slightly. Mr. Moretti only brings people here when he intends to protect them. I looked at her carefully. That does not exactly sound reassuring. To my surprise, she smiled. I have worked for him since he was 19 years old. I know the difference between the man people fear and the man who lives in this house. Before I could ask what that meant, she opened a door near the end of the hallway. The room beyond stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-soaked gardens. A fireplace glowing softly against stone walls. A bed large enough to belong in a luxury hotel. Fresh clothes folded neatly across the bench at the foot of the bed. I cannot accept this, I said immediately. Maria's expression turned almost amused. You are arguing with Amore. Save your energy. The door closed softly behind her, leaving me alone for the first time all night. Silence settled around me heavily. I moved slowly toward the window, staring out across the dark gardens while rain drifted through golden light outside. Somewhere downstairs, muffled voices echoed briefly before fading again. This house felt safe in the same way castles probably felt safe centuries ago. Beautiful, protected. Impossible to escape quickly if something went wrong. My reflection in the glass looked exhausted. Hair damp from the rain. Eyes shuttered from stress and fear. I barely recognized myself anymore. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Before I could answer, the door opened slightly and Damien stepped inside carrying a small ceramic mug. He had changed clothes. Black sweater now instead of the dress shirt. Somehow even more dangerous looking because he appeared human for half a second instead of untouchable. Tea, he said quietly, setting the mug on the table near me. Maria insists it helps people sleep. I crossed my arms carefully. Do you normally bring frightened women tea after relocating them to hidden estates? A faint show of amusement touched his face again. Only the stubborn ones. The fireplace crackled softly between us. Damien studied me silently for several seconds before speaking again. You are safe here, Evelyn. His voice lowered slightly. Nobody enters this property without my permission. I should have felt trapped hearing those words. Instead, for the first time in almost 48 hours, my heartbeat finally started slowing down. And somehow that terrified me even more. I woke up at 3:17 in the morning to the sound of thunder rolling across the estate. For a few disoriented seconds I did not remember where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling above me glowed softly from the fireplace embers still burning low across the room while rain tapped gently against the massive windows. Then everything rushed back at once. Noah, Richard Bennett, Damien Moretti. Fear settled immediately into my chest again like it had been waiting for me to wake up. I pushed the blankets aside and walked barefoot toward the window. The storm outside had intensified. Wind moved violently through the trees surrounding the property while lightning flashed silver across the gardens below. Somewhere deep inside the estate, a door closed softly. Then voices. Low. Urgent. Curiosity is dangerous around powerful men. Every instinct told me that. But exhaustion and anxiety make people reckless. I pulled on the oversized sweater Maria left folded near the bed and slipped quietly into the hallway. The estate looked different at night, darker. Less polished somehow. Shadows stretched across the marble floors while dim wall sconces cast golden light through the silence. The voices drifted from downstairs. Male. Controlled, I moved slowly toward the staircase before stopping halfway down when I realized one of the voices belonged to Damien. How many? He asked calmly. 3 vehicles confirmed near the Queen's property, another man answered. No movement since midnight. Queen's property, my apartment. Cold tightened across my skin. I stayed perfectly still near the staircase while Damien stood below near the fireplace, speaking with 2 security men dressed in black suits. He looked different here at night. Harder somehow. Less human than the man who brought me tea upstairs. And Bennett? Damien asked, still denying involvement publicly. But one of our sources inside the district attorney's office says he is pressuring them to charge Miss Carter with assault. Anger flared instantly through me. Assault. For protecting a child. Damien's expression never changed. That almost scared me more. He touches her legally, Damien said softly, and every reporter in the city will wake up with Bennett's financial records on their desks by morning. Silence followed. Heavy silence. One of the guards shifted carefully. Sir, escalation may attract attention. Damien looked toward the rain-covered windows without blinking. Good. Something about the way he said it made my heartbeat stutter. Not rage. Certainty. The terrifying kind powerful men carry when they already know exactly how far they are willing to go. I should have gone back upstairs. Instead, the old wooden stair beneath my foot creaked softly. Every head in the room lifted instantly. One of the guards moved automatically toward his jacket before recognizing me. Damien turned fully toward the staircase, his dark eyes locking onto mine. Immediately, "You should be sleeping," he said quietly. I descended the remaining stairs slowly, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I looked standing there, barefoot in borrowed clothes inside a Mafia boss's estate at 3 in the morning. "I could say the same thing to you." One corner of his mouth shifted faintly before disappearing again. The two guards exchanged brief glances before Damien nodded once toward the hallway. "Leave us." Neither questioned him. Within seconds, we stood alone beside the massive fireplace while thunder rolled through the estate again. Up close, exhaustion shadowed Damien's face more clearly now. Tiny lines near his eyes, tension hidden beneath perfect control. "You heard enough to be frightened," he said after a moment. I already was frightened. His gaze softened slightly. Barely noticeable. Fair. Rain lashed harder against the windows. I crossed my arms tightly against the chill. Are people really outside my apartment? Yes. Why? Damien studied me carefully before answering. "Because Richard Bennett does not know what I have told you. And if he thinks I know too much." Damien's silence answered before his words did. My stomach twisted. "This is insane. This is New York," he corrected quietly. "There is a difference." I let out a hollow laugh under my breath. "You say things like this is normal." "For me, it is." That landed harder than he probably intended. For the first time since meeting Damien, I stopped seeing only the expensive suits and terrifying confidence. I saw loneliness, the kind built slowly over years inside dangerous worlds where trust becomes impossible. "How long have you lived like this?" I asked before thinking. Damien looked genuinely surprised by the question, like nobody had asked him something personal in a very long time. He glanced toward the storm outside before answering, long enough to forget there was another way. Silence settled softly between us after that. Not awkward, heavy human. The fire crackled nearby while lightning illuminated the room in brief silver flashes. I looked at him carefully then. Really looked. Everyone in the city probably saw Damien Moretti as untouchable, ruthless, powerful. But standing here in the middle of the night, he mostly looked tired. Tired and carrying too many things alone. "You keep protecting people," I said quietly. "But who protects you?" His eyes lifted sharply to mine. Genuine surprise flickered across his face for the first time since I met him. Then something else appeared underneath it. Something softer. More dangerous. Before he could answer, another security guard entered the room quickly from the hallway. "Sir." The atmosphere changed instantly. Damien straightened slightly. Controlled again. Untouchable again. What happened? The guard hesitated briefly before speaking. "Richard Bennett just filed emergency custody transfer paperwork for Noah." Every breath left my lungs at once. The room went completely silent after the guard spoke. Even the storm outside seemed quieter somehow, like the entire world paused for half a second waiting to see what Damien Moretti would do next. I looked between the guard and Damien, trying to process the words emergency custody transfer. "What does that mean?" I asked quickly. The guard glanced toward Damien before answering carefully. "Richard Bennett is attempting to move Noah into private residential supervision outside New York jurisdiction." Cold spread through my chest so fast it hurt. Outside New York. Damien's jaw tightened slightly. If the transfer goes through, Noah disappears into one of Bennett's private facilities before investigators can reach him. Private facilities. My voice cracked on the last word. Nobody answered immediately. That terrified me more than if they had. Damien turned toward the guard. "How long?" "Paperwork hearing is scheduled for 9:30 this morning." I checked the grandfather clock near the fireplace automatically. 3:28, less than 6 hours away. Panic climbed violently through me. "Then we stop it." Damien looked at me carefully. "It is not that simple. A little boy is about to disappear." I snapped before I could stop myself. "How is that not simple?" The guard shifted uncomfortably before Damien raised one hand, slightly signaling him to leave again. Once the room cleared, Damien exhaled slowly and moved toward the fireplace. "Richard Bennett owns judges," he said quietly. "He funds campaigns, hospitals. Half the family courts in this city worship his donations. So everybody just lets him do whatever he wants." Anger burned hot through my exhaustion now. You said you have evidence. Damien stared into the fire for several seconds before answering. Evidence only matters when someone powerful allows it to matter. The bitterness in his voice caught me off guard. It sounded personal, deeply personal. I stepped closer slowly. Then why are you fighting him at all? His eyes lifted to mine immediately. Something dangerous moved behind them, then disappeared beneath control. As somebody should. Thunder shook the windows again. I wrapped my arms tight around myself, trying to steady my breathing. Noah is terrified of him, I whispered. I saw it. Damien nodded once. I know. Then help me understand something. I swallowed hard. Why does Richard still have custody? Damien looked away briefly toward the rain-covered windows before finally speaking. Because Noah's mother died 2 years ago, grief flickered unexpectedly through his expression. Quiet. Controlled. And because money rewrites narratives very efficiently. My chest tightened painfully. You think she knew something? I think she tried to leave. Silence filled the room after that, heavy enough to feel. I looked at Damien differently suddenly. Less like a mysterious billionaire. More like a man carrying ghosts he could never fully put down. You have been trying to stop him alone this whole time, I realized softly. A faint, humorless smile touched his face. You make that sound noble. Is it not? His gaze met mine again fuller then, and for one strange suspended moment the storm outside disappeared completely. There was only the firelight reflecting in his dark eyes and the exhaustion both of us carried in different ways. You still think there are good men and bad men, Damien said quietly. The world stopped working like that for me a long time ago. Before I could answer, another voice interrupted from the doorway. Sir. One of the guards reappeared holding a tablet. You need to see this. Damien took the device immediately. I watched his expression darken almost imperceptibly while reading what appeared on the screen. What happened? I asked. He handed me the tablet without a word. A live news segment filled the screen. Richard Bennett stood outside a courthouse surrounded by cameras, looking polished and devastated in a navy overcoat. My stepson has experienced severe emotional distress due to unstable influences around him, Richard told reporters solemnly. As a father, my only priority is protecting Noah's mental health. Rage surged through me so fast I nearly dropped the tablet. He is lying. Damien remained perfectly still beside me, too still. There is more, he said quietly. The reporter continued speaking. Sources close to the Bennett family also claim former teacher Evelyn Carter may have displayed obsessive behavior toward the child in recent weeks. My blood turned cold instantly. Obsessive. The word echoed inside my skull like a physical blow. Richard was not just discrediting me. He was building a story around me. One dangerous enough to erase my credibility completely. I looked up at Damien with panic rising hard in my throat. He is turning me into the threat. Yes. The calmness in Damien's answer terrified me. That means he is afraid. I stared at the television again while Richard Bennett placed a comforting hand against his chest for the cameras like some grieving father, protecting his family from dangerous outsiders. The entire performance looked perfect. Practiced. Untouchable. People are going to believe him, I whispered. Damien stepped closer then, not enough to overwhelm me. Just enough that his voice dropped lower. Listen to me carefully, Evelyn. His eyes held mine with terrifying focus. The moment men like Richard start panicking, they make mistakes. And if they do not, for the first time all night, something cold appeared beneath Damien's calm exterior. Not anger. Something much worse. Resolve. Then I make